So yesterday we left off talking about the least common denominator. And once you have determined what the LCD is and you do your multiplication, you'll end up with a trinomial. Now, sometimes this trinomial is factorable. Okay, sometimes it is not. For this one, you have the 15x squared minus 20x minus 6. So in a situation like that, I would try to factor it. Like you have 5x and you have 3x. Okay, and then you just need to do like your guessing and checking. So if you do like a 3 and a 2, you have 15 and 6. That's not going to make 20. So you're just going to have to do like your guess and your checks. Okay, and sometimes it is not factorable. If it is not factorable, you will leave it as a trinomial. Okay, so we've seen one where it's not factorable, and we've seen a couple where it is. All right, and then for part E, you have k over k minus n minus k over n minus k. And this one is a little bit tricky. Okay, and you can't just subtract those k's. Before you can add or subtract, you need to make sure that you have a common denominator. Okay, these are very close, but they are not the exact same because here the k is positive, here's the k is negative. Okay, so if you take a negative out here, this becomes n minus k. Or you can take a negative out of the second one and make it k minus n. Okay, but once you see that, then you know your LCD is going to be -1 times n minus k. Okay, so if that's your LCD, then all we have to do is multiply by -1 over -1. Okay, so you're going to multiply those numerators together. Okay, so whenever you have a minus, one thing I recommend is that you change the negative to a plus. And then distribute. Okay, and then once you have that, now you can just add or subtract across. Okay, so this is going to be k over -n minus k. And then a negative times a negative is going to be a positive over -n minus k. So once the denominators are the same, you can just leave it like this. You can leave it as 2k over -n minus k, or if you distributed that and you left it as k minus n, that would be fine too. Okay, so it just depends on what you are taking out. So there's multiple ways to do that one. All right, so for part F, will you guys leave some space beforehand, because like I said, I'm gonna try to help you avoid writing the same thing over and over again. So if you just leave some space, you're going to be able to see what you're multiplying by. Okay, so to review what we talked about yesterday, you are going to be factoring the denominators. So when you factor the denominator, start with 2x and x, has to multiply to -6, but add to 11. So if I put a 6 and a 1 here, this is going to be 12 minus 1. We're going to factor here as well. So we have x plus 6 minus 3. Okay, and then, like I said earlier, anytime you have a negative, feel free to make that a plus and make that negative. Okay, I do think that's the best way to make sure that you distribute properly. When you're thinking of what your LCD is, your LCD has to contain everything that is in the denominator. Okay, so we're going to start here. The LCD has to have a factor of 2x minus 1. The LCD has to have a factor of x plus 6. If you already have this in your LCD, you don't need to add it again. Okay, so just 1x plus 6 is fine. And then you also need an x minus 3. Okay, so set up what you're going to multiply each one by. When you set up the multiply, it should be a fraction that is equivalent to what number? 1. Okay, so it's just, what is this missing? So the first one does not have the factor of x minus 3. So we're going to multiply by x minus 3 over x minus 3. Okay, and then on the right side, this one does not have the factor of 2x minus 1. Okay, do not start canceling anything out here. You are going to have to distribute. Okay, so when you distribute, you're going to multiply each of these by 6. Okay, that's going to give you 6x minus 18. And really, once you know that you've gotten the common denominator, we're just going to put everything in the numerator together. So now we're going to distribute -8. -8 times 2x is -16x. -8 times -1 is going to be +8. Okay, and then all of that is over the LCD, which is 2x minus 1, x plus 6, x minus 3, and the LCD can be in any order. Okay, and now is when we get to clean it up. So we are going to combine like terms. So 6 minus 16 gives you -10x. -18 plus 8 gives you -10. And then here, can you guys see that that's going to be factorable? Yep, because what's the GCF? So you got to take out the GCF. So if you take out -10, this becomes x, and then what else? Plus 1. Now, if you could divide out one of the factors, it would only be at this last step, okay? And I'm fine if you just want to, like if you're just simplifying on the top, just keep it on the top and you just draw your arrow over there, that's fine. Okay, so you always want to leave it in factored form, okay? So when you're writing these out from your textbook, if you want to like leave a space in case you don't want to rewrite the original problem again, that is fine. And then see if you guys can write what the LCD is. Okay, if you feel like you know how to do this, I do want you to try. We haven't seen one like this yet. It just helps me to see if you can do that without me telling you. Okay, so what's something that has to be in the LCD? Yeah, so we start with the first one, the 3b plus d, that has to be in there, right? This is just one value, the 3b plus d, okay? When there's no plus in between, that has to be part of it too, so it's multiplied by 3bd, okay? That's why I think this one's a little bit trickier. So really, what you're going to multiply by is the denominator of the other fraction. So this one needs to be multiplied by 3b plus d. And this one needs to be multiplied by 3bd. And really, anytime you're unsure, you can always multiply by the opposite denominator. It's just, if it's not the least common denominator, you might have to do some simplification, but you could still get to the correct answer. Okay, so then we're just going to multiply. So when you multiply here, you don't distribute because there's no plus. You're just going to multiply the 3 and the 5. So it's 15bd. And then here, like I said, make sure that you're multiplying the -2. That's why I recommend that you write it like this, or else sometimes people just write the first one as a minus and not the second one. Okay, so that's minus 6b. -2 times d is -2d. And then you do not have any like terms. This is b times d. That could only be combined with other bd's, b's, d's. Okay, so this would be your final answer. You don't have to have the 3bd in parentheses, but you can. Okay, and then that's not going to be factorable either. Okay, now for example 2, when it asks you to simplify, we're going to do just a quick process here. Actually, I'll let you see it first and then we'll write down the process. So again, just leave some space here. So 5 over x plus 6 minus 2x over 2x minus 1. X over 2x minus 1 plus 4 x plus 6. So before we just had two fractions within a fraction. Now we have 2 in the denominator, 2 in the numerator, and that one big one. Okay, so that can be overwhelming. To make this process a little bit easier, the first thing that we do is simplify the numerator, then simplify the denominator, and by simplify we mean make it one term. Okay, right now you have 2 different terms here. We're going to condense that to one term. And then once you've done that, you can divide with the keep, change, flip method. Okay, so when we look at the numerator, this is exactly what we were doing in our earlier questions. You just have to multiply to get your LCD. Okay, so for the least common denominator, can you guys see now that it's just going to be these two multiplied together? So that means we're going to multiply this one by x plus 6 over itself. And this one gets multiplied by 2x minus 1 over itself. And the bottom we leave in factored form, but the top we do have to distribute. Okay, so when we're keeping track of this, I'm just going to leave my fraction bar for the large fraction. And then we're going to distribute here. So 5 times 2x is 10x. 5 times negative 1. I'm going to put that over my LCD. Okay, and I want you to write what you get when you distribute here. Okay, so Noah, what'd you get when you distributed here?
2x squared minus 6x.
And did you keep the negative?
Yes.
Okay, so it should be negative 2x squared. So you have the minus, and then negative 2x times 6 will be negative 12x. So just make sure you guys have the negative in front of both of those. Okay, and then in the denominator, again, you have these two factors, but now we're going to multiply the right by 2x minus 1 over itself, and we're going to multiply the left by this. Okay, so you do have to show this part as your work, or else your answer would just come out of nowhere. Okay, so you do have to show what you're multiplying by. Okay, so you need to show that you're multiplying by something equivalent to 1. Okay, so go ahead and factor those. Not factor, distribute. Okay, so when you distribute, x times x is x squared plus 6x. 4 times 2x is 8x. 4 times negative 1, negative 4. Okay, and then we're just going to combine our like terms. So negative 2x squared, don't forget to take the negative with it. 10 minus 12 is negative 2, and then you have a negative 5 there. Okay, and then in the denominator, you have x squared plus 14x minus 4. Okay, and then we're going to keep change flip. Okay, so here you have the, I wrote this wrong, didn't I? It's minus and minus. So this one should be minus. Right, we had minus 1, minus, minus, minus. Okay, so that means when you are dividing, you can cancel those out. So you can cancel out the 2x minus 1. You can cancel out the x plus 6. Okay, and then you do want to see if you can factor. This is negative 4 and it adds to 14. There's no way that that's going to happen. Okay, and then for this one, if you took out the, I would take out the negative first because that's easier for me to factor. So if this is a positive 5, okay, 5 and 1, there's no way it's going to make 2. Okay, so those are not factorable. If those are not factorable, then your final answer is just negative 2x squared minus 2x minus 5. If you did factor out the negative and left that in front, that would be fine. Okay, but you don't have to. Okay, and then for B, we're gonna write just half of it up here so you have some room. So you have 8 over x squared minus 16 minus x over 3x plus 2. Okay, and you have 3 over 3x plus 2 on the bottom plus 4x over x squared minus 16. So notice again that these two denominators are the same, these two denominators are the same. You don't need to worry about factoring this. It is x plus 4, x minus 4, and you could factor that if you wanted to. But when you multiply, you would have to distribute it anyway. Okay, so for this, if you want to keep it as x squared minus 16, you can. And then here we'd multiply by 3x plus 2 over 3x plus 2. Okay, and so when I'm doing something like that, sometimes the first thing I'll do is I'll just write what the denominator is. Okay, and you guys can go ahead and write the numerator. And then when you're ready, I want you to do the denominator as well. Okay, so for this part, you're just distributing the 8, right? So 8 times 3, 24x. 8 times 2, 16. Again, you might want to make this a plus and then distribute the negative. So negative x times x squared is going to be negative x cubed. Negative x times negative 16 is going to be plus 16x. Okay, and then if you want to like clean that up while you're thinking about it, that is fine. So you have the negative x cubed, 24 and 16 is going to be 40x, and then plus the 16. Okay, and then for the denominator, if you haven't gotten there yet, I want you to write what you're going to multiply by. Okay, and then if you have already finished that, because it looks like we're going at different pieces, if you want to get out your textbook or a Chromebook. Okay, so the denominator was very similar to the numerator. So all we had to do here is multiply x squared minus 16. Okay, and 3x plus 2. Okay, so when you distribute, you got 3x squared minus 48 plus 12x squared plus 8x. Any issues with that distribution? Now, based on what we did last time, hopefully you guys can see what's going to happen this time again. So when you simplify, you get 15x squared plus 8x minus 48. And if you do keep, change, flip, what's going to happen? If they have the same denominator, what's going to happen? What happened over here? They're going to cancel. So if you want to cancel it at this step, that is fine. The numerator is going to be negative x cubed plus 40x plus 16. Okay, and neither of those are factorable. So you're going to leave it just like this. Okay, your 9.2 homework is mandatory. That is due tomorrow in Google Classroom. Okay, you have the rest of the time to work on this.